Where's my kitty cat? Tora, come here, sweetie. Oh, such a bad kitty. Look, say hello to the people. Say hi. Yes, you're a good kitty cat. You are. Tora is Japanese for little tiger. She came to me in the middle of the night when her humans were fleeing some kind of situation and they couldn't take the kitty cat with them. I strongly suspect that Tora is part bobcat. In other words, a domestic wild hybrid. She does love to chase the little pink light, the laser pointer. Problem is, I have to keep buying batteries for it. No, I see that I have at least one listener. I wanted to go online on November 22, the anniversary of the assassination of JFK, John F. Kennedy, in 1963, but, well, I was too busy listening to and watching other shows about it. Hello, strontium. Strontium nitrate with an X in the middle. Well, shoot. Let's see, November 22, 1963. I believe our lunch break came at 11 o'clock. Might have been 11:30. This was, a long time ago, like 56 years. But anyway, lunch break. I was 9 years old in the 4th grade. After lunch, they let us out onto the playground, and we were just walking out from the cafeteria to the playground when first bells went off, and then one of the ladies in the office came on the loudspeaker and told us all to go back to our classrooms. Oh, by the way, this is Pacific time. I was in Los Angeles County in Culver City, Southern California. We were really upset that we did not get to go out to the recess. We came back to our classroom, and one of the hall monitors, a boy named Craig, I learned only decades later that the hall monitors were always the bad kids. They wanted to keep them too busy to get into trouble. Well, he rolled in this big color TV on a great big metal cart. And the teacher plugged it in and turned on the news. And the news was that President Kennedy had been shot in Dallas, Texas. It wasn't till sometime later that they told us he was dead. Oh yes, everyone there seems to remember every detail except George H.W. Bush, who can't remember where he was on that day. Right. I have a feeling that he was in the CIA, and I have a feeling that whatever went on that day is still classified, so he can't say. I don't know whether Bush was a good guy, a bad guy, or indifferent, but he was there. At least he might not have been right where Kennedy was shot in Dealey Plaza, but he was in Dallas doing something. Um, well, anyway, they showed us the news on a color TV. We didn't have a color TV at home. Ours was black and white. But I'll never forget. Now, people all over the United States are insisting that the television news did not show the actual um, shooting, that they didn't show Kennedy's head getting blown off. But our television did. Um, well, anyway, they sent us home early. They just kept us in our classroom while they called our parents to make sure they could send us home. So I'd walk home, which was really less than a block. And I walk in the front door, and Mom, who hated Kennedy, she also called him S head, and she said the whole S word. I was horrified. Yeah, we didn't like Kennedy. He was a Democrat, and my parents were Republicans, but uh, blowing his brains out is something way too far beyond the pale. And frankly, looking back, I can see that JFK was more conservative than most Republicans today. But in any case, he was shot, he was dead, and they showed not the Zapruder film, not the Orville Nix film, but a news film with a news announcer. And they showed it over and over. It would have been across the street from where Zapruder was standing. In other words, Abraham Zapruder was on the side where the infamous grassy knoll is located. But the footage that we saw was filmed from a camera across the street. So, um, whereas in Zapruder's film, JFK is in front of Jackie Kennedy. In the footage we saw, Jackie was in front of Jack, in front of her husband, in her pink suit with the pillbox hat, pillbox hat. I only knew that it was pink because the television in our classroom was in color. But they showed it, and I was so irritated. The news announcer said there's a man and a woman running across the bridge, and the camera panned over to the left to show the bridge. But I couldn't, it was too far away. I couldn't see details. But no law enforcement that I know of ever followed up on the man and the woman running across the bridge. They didn't follow up on so many things. So 2 days ago was the anniversary of the murder of John Fitzgerald Kennedy in public by somebody. And I really don't think it was Lee Harvey Oswald. My main reason is that the planned parade route was not supposed to go there. Strontium, it was network news, but it was the Los Angeles local station. And I don't think we were watching Walter Cronkite. I think we watched eventually all of the channels, but Mom's favorite was KTLA, or KTTV, yeah, Channel 11. I think KTLA was 5. And KCOP was 13. But we watched all the channels when they went to a commercial or somebody just talking. Mom would flip the channels. She would get up, walk across the room, and turn the knob to another channel. That's what you did back then. And so we eventually watched all of the channels. Even Channel 4, which Mom thought was communist, NBC. So we did here and there see Walter Cronkite, but we saw other newscasters like George Putnam and, Cronkite's young, upcoming associate. I knew his name a minute ago. Dan Rather. He's an old guy now, retired, I think. He was the young kid then. Anyway, they must have used the Telstar satellite to send the images from Dallas to Los Angeles because they had it so quickly. And the Telstar satellite was only about a year old, but it was used for telephone communications and for television news and even radio news, but primarily telephones. The telephone company, good old Ma Bell, financed most of the um, work that led to these Telstar satellites. Tel for telephone, and star because it looked like a star in the sky. Well, anyway, it appears from the footage that, and including the Zapruder film, that Kennedy was shot in the back as the limousine came around the corner, making a wide left turn onto, whatever street that was. I have trouble remembering the names of the streets, but the street that goes past the grassy knoll. And the Dallas school textbook repository. Well, anyway, that's where Oswald supposedly built a sniper's nest and used one gun or another to shoot Kennedy from the 6th floor. Anyway, it does appear that he got shot in the back and leaned forward, but that wasn't what killed him. That hit his actual back, not his head. It was like a ritual. First, incapacitate him so he can't move. And then, as the limousine went past where Zapruder was standing, he got hit again, this time in the head. And unfortunately, the Zapruder film cannot be real. You can tell. Now, I'm not an expert, and I saw problems with the background. You can tell, and experts have really looked at it and said, yeah, the background has been changed. Even back then, even without computer, digital, etc., could be done. The Zapruder film has been altered. One woman who was there insisted that she was standing in the street when she heard the shots ring out, but in the Zapruder film, she's way back on the lawn, far away from the limo. She took a Polaroid photograph and she got into the street to get a good close shot. And of course, the FBI or somebody took her photograph. Took decades to get it back. In fact, everybody had cameras and film confiscated that day, except Abraham Zapruder. How'd they miss him? Standing there on top of a concrete platform with his tripod and his 8mm movie camera. One man who was there testified that a police officer knocked him down and pulled the camera out of his hands. Well, hello there, Oswald. You missed a great view of my kitty cat, Tora. The neighbor's making noise again. I don't fuss about it because the old man who was a major pack rat has gone to a home and his son is trying to clean the place up. Here she is. Hi, Tora. Say hello to Oswald and Strontium. Isn't she a cutie? Oh, yeah, she's so sweet. Yeah, you with the tail. Where'd your tail go? There, here. She's a cutie pie, but she's young and active and won't sit still for long. Yes, like Tora, 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 which means tiger, tiger, tiger. I saw that movie because when my son was young, we used to go. Oh, sorry about your cat, Oswald. Well, we used to go once a week to the Fox Theater in Fullerton. It didn't have a huge screen or fancy sound, but it was cheap. And we'd go once a week after school and watch whatever was playing. And one time it was Tora, Tora, Tora. Another time it was Midway. The only one we walked out of was called Dogs. We and many other theater goers went out to the lobby for a while because it had scenes of people's pet dogs killing them. Anyway, we watched on TV our president being murdered. And I still, even if Oswald was there, even if Oswald fired a gun, this was not the work of one man. The parade route was not supposed to go down that street. It was changed at the last minute after Kennedy's plane landed in Dallas. So why would Oswald build a sniper's nest pointed at a street where the parade route was not going? Makes no sense. So at least to that extent, it was an inside job. But there's so much evidence against so many suspects that I've come to what I believe is the only logical conclusion, and that is that they all did it. Oh, God, my eye itches. It's that time of year. It's cold, so I run the heater and I try to humidify the air, but I still end up with dry skin, dry eyes, and so forth. Hi, Tim. I got Tim, Oswald, and Strontium, and not one of them has hit the like button. Well, anyway, let's hope my internet connection is more reliable this week than it was last week. I don't know who specifically killed Kennedy. I do know that it was covered up, and I'd sure like to know, the actual facts. Oh, 3 likes. Thank you, guys. Hmm, man, I was a little late today because I had to restart my modem and my computer because YouTube would not load. And I don't know what background app was messing with my computer, but there was one, and I had to restart the computer in order to turn it off because I couldn't find it. I had no clue what app it was. Might be just a Microsoft update. That's what it usually is. Hmm. Well, imagine being with Philip K. Dick, who went nuts every November 17th because his house was torn apart on November 17th, 1971. And then he went nuts again on November 22, the anniversary of the JFK assassination. Um, Weird. Now, yeah, so 5 days apart, he was just beginning to get over his agitation on November 17th when, oh, it's November 22. Anniversary of the JFK assassination. Now, they killed many others before and after. I'm trying to remember a name that always escapes me. They killed, of course, most famously, I think, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the black evangelist. I think he was Southern Baptist. Anyway, a Christian man who was advocating for peace and civility and civil rights. They killed Bobby Kennedy. They Chappaquiddicked Ted Kennedy. Somehow he managed to, he was probably drunk. He drove his car into a small lake or pond and he survived, but the girl in his car, I should say young woman, Mary Jo Kopechne drowned. Now, I'm sure Ted Kennedy was not exactly innocent, but I think somebody arranged for that to happen. It killed his political career, although he did manage to stay in the Senate for many years. There was no way he could become president. All they had to do was mention Chappaquiddick. And then, of course, they Watergated Nixon. Now, Nixon didn't order Watergate, but he did try to cover it up. I'm still blanking on the name. Back in the 50s, another prominent black evangelist was murdered. They were a little bolder back then. They shot him up to where, I mean, it was like a firing squad, and every one of them had live bullets and fired more than once. Let me see if I can get a name for you. I think it was 57. Well, I'm getting James Reeb, 1957, a Unitarian minister, pastor, and activist. 3 men went on trial for his murder, and no one was ever convicted. Who's the other guy? Oh, come on. I hit O instead of 0 for 1950. No, no, no. Not O, 0. Okay. Reeb, Reeb. Come on. Medgar Evers. Oh, 1963. Let me get more on Medgar Evers. Same year that Kennedy was killed. I don't want Wiki. I'll go with biography.com. Here we go. Malcolm X was murdered, they say, by black Muslims because he left that church and he started preaching peace and nonviolence. But Malcolm X was not a pastor. I'm thinking of Medgar Evers. He was shot in the back in the driveway of his home and died less than an hour later in June 12, 1963. Medgar Evers. They were really going wild with these assassinations, but mostly black leaders. However, they got John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy. They ruined Ted Kennedy's chances of ever becoming president. It didn't matter whether it was a Democrat or a Republican. They got Nixon too. They got Gerald Ford. Nobody would vote for him because he was kind of appointed by Nixon. And guess what? Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission that rubber stamped the official story of the JFK assassination. They got Jimmy Carter with that botched rescue of the hostages in Iran. They shot Ronald Reagan, but he didn't die because one of his uh, one of his entourage took the bullet for him. Oh, and someone did shoot at Gerald Ford, but she missed. Well, hi, Sleepy Dave. You got here just in time for me to take a quick break. And hello, Maximiliano Ponce. Is that like Ponce de Leon, the great explorer? Well, anyway, I need to take a really quick break. So I'll be right back, and you can take a look at the mess behind me. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm slower than I used to be. Looking down on creation and the only explanation I can find is the love that I've felt ever since you've been mine. Your love's put me at the top of the world. What's that kitty cat doing? My dear Flora. Yeah, you're a silly girl. You silly you are, kid. Holy, that's cold. Okay. I hope I didn't lose anybody, but yes, I have weak kidneys. Uh, Whew, that's better. I'm back, and this is not poltergeist, but I am changing my clunky boots to lighter shoes. I love these boots. Had them 3 years now. They're lined with wool, fuzzy wool, but fluffy. 48 today. Thanks for the welcome, Sleepy Dave. Um, so far, the internet is holding today. Knock on wood. Uh, whew. So, they got all these leaders, especially the ones who were calling for peace and civility and civil rights. But I imagine that a lot of people wanted them dead, not just one faction. And as much as I knew from having been alive and conscious at the time and paying attention, I've learned even more about the JFK assassination by listening to people who've done deep research, like Joseph P. Farrell. Oh, yes, Tim Greenglass. They got Marilyn Monroe and Gene Seberg and probably quite a few others. Marilyn was too close to the Kennedys. Hmm. Now, what Farrell came up with was I can't remember the names. Okay, let's see the Louisiana private detective, JFK suspect. Okay. Jim Garrison, yeah, here we go. Jim Garrison, a DA in New Orleans, I believe, anyway, in Louisiana. I don't want Wikipedia. Uh, oh. Jim Garrison was investigating former FBI agent Guy Bannister. I'll use this one. And I'll give you a link to an article on NOLA.com about Guy Bannister. Guy Bannister was an FBI agent who retired and became a private investigator. But when he was working for the FBI, he was investigating UFOs. Oh, Gerard likes my cat. Well, anyway, Guy Bannister would file his reports as is it subject or topic, something like that, and the letter X. The X-Files originally, Guy Bannister. He started the real X-Files. I'm trying to talk and type at the same time. Interesting. He investigated that incident up in Washington State where pieces of a UFO fell from the sky and some of the pieces landed on a boat, killed the guy's dog, injured his son. Guy Bannister investigated that. Two Air Force officers took some pieces of the debris, and when they were flying back to base, the plane crashed and they were killed, and the pieces of debris were lost. Interesting. That was shortly before the term flying saucer was coined when okay, what was that guy's name? Pilot, flying saucer. I don't know if that Kenneth Arnold. Here we go. Kenneth Arnold didn't actually describe the aircraft he saw as saucers. He said they skipped over the air like a stone skipping on the water, or like a saucer skipping on the water. You can take a saucer and flip it, trying to get in front of the camera like that. So it's spinning and it skips over the water. Thank you, Sleepy Dave. I'm just no good at names. Oh, this is a paranormal topic on the history website, history.com. And he said they flew at incredible speed over Mount something or other. I forget which mountain. Rumor has it, by the way, that a flying saucer crashed in Big Bear, near Big Bear Lake, in 1940. Was it one or two? The Battle for Los Angeles. Google kindly finished the search terms for me. The Battle of Los Angeles. 1942. It was on my dad's birthday, February 25. He turned 16 on that day. Well, rumor has it that there was an aircraft and that it crashed near Big Bear Lake. Now, Big Bear is a ski resort, and it's several thousand feet higher than Lake Arrowhead. Most people know Lake Arrowhead. I'm a couple thousand feet lower than Lake Arrowhead. So I'd really like to take some time in the summer to look around Big Bear and see where some kind of aircraft might have crashed. I wouldn't say flying saucer, no one ever called it that. But see, on that day, since World War II was in progress, curtains over their windows. They were usually heavy, dark denim, and they put them over the normal curtains so that any aircraft flying overhead would not have any light to give them a target. But of course, Dad looked at the sky. He was a teenager. Anyway, oh, Tora's got her second favorite toy. A heavy ball with feathers attached to it. The kind of ball that always stands up straight, so you knock it over and it flips itself back up. Her favorite toy is the elusive pink dot, otherwise known as a laser pointer. Well, anyway, Phil and I really wanted to see flying saucers, but we never did. People told stories about them, but we never saw one. And I've seen strange things in the sky, but they were not saucers. One in particular that made the network news, the local network, Channel 7, KABC, Los Angeles, was a UFO flying over Anaheim. You know, home of the mouse. It's where the original Disneyland is, down in Orange County. Well, I recognized it immediately as the stealth fighter that we supposedly did not buy. The Air Force bought the Blackbird, and this other one was white on top and black on the bottom, kind of like a skinny baby space shuttle. But it was traveling rather slowly for an aircraft. I don't know. It was ours, though. Tora, get out of there. The squirt bottle is my friend. She knows not to get into my shelves where I keep things like pens and stuff. Yeah, I have a squirt bottle and you don't. You. Come here, kitty, kitty. All right. Let's placate the little brat. Here's your pink light. Go get it. Go get it. Ooh, it's over here. There. Okay, all right. I can't afford new batteries right now, so you'll have to wait a while. Um, does what have an official name, Strontium? Oh, Trump. I don't want to get into Trump. He's a Democrat in sheep's clothing. But I don't like any of the Democratic candidates either. But I don't get hysterical about it. I do believe that the only reason Trump is alive is that he kept his own security and is not depending on the Secret Service alone. Oh, the secret aircraft? I don't remember which was whose. Let's see. Stealth fighters, about 1992. Competing competition. The Joint Strike Fighter Program. After a competition, this is from Wikipedia for what it's worth. After a competition between the Boeing X-32 and the Lockheed Martin X-35, the Marine Corps and the Air Force agreed to jointly develop the Lockheed Martin F-35, which of course is the famous Blackbird. But the Northrop / McDonnell Douglas well, let's see if there's something in here, because that's a different aircraft. Anyway, the Northrop X-32. All these X's, by the way. X-32. Don't remember hitting that backslash. I must have. It's right near the enter key. Northrop X-32. Well, I'm not getting the info I want. Yeah, but the one we actually bought was F as in Frank. F-35. No X. So anyway, somebody was still flying the X-32 after the program was supposedly canceled because the military bought the F-35. And of course, I'm familiar with the X-15. As far as I know, it still holds the speed record for aircraft. I don't know. Well, you see, I'm writing a book which is very slow because it's more academic than my previous work. The X in exegesis. And of course, it's the exegesis of Philip K. Dick, my late ex-husband. Yeah, the X-15, Strontium, right. It was a rocket. It had little tiny wings. Was it Chuck Yeager who broke the sound barrier for the first time? I think it was. Well, anyway, um, we have been with the X1. Wow, thank you, Ellis. Mm. You see, the X keeps cropping up, and it's simply a fortunate coincidence that exegesis, the first sound in that word, is X, and it's the second letter. Well, gee, but Phil was consumed for most of his life with what happened to him on November 17th, 1971. There's a strange noise. And what happened to John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963. I have to check this noise. Okay, it isn't in my house. I gotta get better windows. The neighbor's doing something noisy. It sounds like a gigantic vacuum cleaner, I mean, huge. Oh well, not my house, not my problem. Well, I don't know whether JFK would have started a nuclear war. He managed to avoid one over the Cuban Missile Crisis. Um, but we didn't like him. We thought he was a communist. The fact is that the deep state, whatever that is, wants war. The best way to stifle dissent at home is to start a foreign war so that everybody will rally around the flag, march off to war, work for the war effort, etc. Just like a novel that Philip K. Dick wrote, a sadly neglected novel titled The Penultimate Truth, and it's based on or expanded from his story, The Defenders, in which people live underground, working hard to support the war effort, and they believe that these leadies, these robots, are up there fighting the war on their behalf. But it turns out that there's no war at all. They're being had. And the ending of The Defenders is quite different from the ending of The Penultimate Truth. So I recommend that you read both of them. You can actually find the audiobook of The Defenders online, on YouTube, in fact, for free. But I recommend that you also buy the novel, The Penultimate Truth, which is longer, more detailed, and has quite a different ending to it. But in both cases, the war is phony, and in a sense, all war is phony. I do believe that we were right to enter World War II against Adolf Hitler, but it pushed us into an unlikely and rather rickety alliance with the Soviet Union, which was not a good thing. But really, in both World War I and World War II, Russia won the war. There wasn't much left of the German army after they tried to take Russia. Let's see. I have to approve your post because YouTube thinks that dick is a cuss word. Idiots. Oh, Second Variety is really there's a movie of Second Variety called Screamers, and it's really underrated. It isn't a great movie, but it isn't a bad movie either. It's worth watching. Screamers. But it's quite different from the story, but not as different as Blade Runner is from Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, or as Next is different from The Golden Man. And then there's Minority Report. Oh, thank you, Strontium. By the way, I don't get any money for any of Philip K. Dick's work. I get money for my own books, which you can find on Amazon. I always recommend Amazon, even though I've heard other authors knock it, but they pay me more than the other online bookstores. Oh well. Yeah, next is Nothing Like the Golden Man. Minority Report kind of, sort of uses the story, but not really. Oh, and Total Recall. Total Recall gets Phil's sense of humor. And the original Blade Runner movie gets his dark vision. But Total Recall doesn't have the dark vision, not really. And it has such a phony, sappy ending. But it's entertaining. Blade Runner doesn't really have the sense of humor, but that final speech by Rutger Hauer as Roy Batty, in the book his name is Beatty. But oh well, anyway, Rutger Hauer's final speech is really moving, and he wrote most of it himself the night before they shot that scene. Tears in the Rain. You can find clips of Tears in the Rain on YouTube. Oh, a Scanner Darkly. A Scanner Darkly is faithful to the text of the novel, but they don't get it. They didn't get the point. Yes, drugs are bad. Yes, drugs destroy people, but the real point of the novel was that the war on drugs is just as bad as the drugs. I get a feeling that Strontium has read things in translation. Mirror Darkly. Well, yeah, in the New Testament, and I forget exactly where, but it is, we see through a glass darkly. Glass meaning mirror. 1 Corinthians 13:12. Uh, the thing is, yeah, Phil got the title from that Bible verse. Oh, the Star Trek episode. I haven't watched Star Trek in years. I got tired of the spin-offs. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like the rotoscope animation. I kind of liked it, but I would have preferred to see the live actors even, and the scenery could be cartoonish. Anyway, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as also I am known. What Paul is saying in that verse is that we kind of know God now, but we'll know God in person in the next life. It kind of goes with death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory? Let's see if I can find that. Death, where is thy sting? No, I don't want the Shakespeare. Grave, where is thy victory? 1 Corinthians 15:55 to 57. Because, of course, the early Christians were counting on immortality after death. Yeah. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. The Israelites and Jews today believe that there is an underworld where dead souls go. It isn't hell. We translate Hades as hell, and we translate the Hebrew Sheol as hell, but it is not fire and brimstone or eternal punishment, at least not for everyone. I want to go through some Greek myth with you. I've started reading one of the sources that Phil relied on, the Robert Graves book, Greek Myth. I think it's Myths with an S. I don't have his copy, so I bought a copy at a yard sale for a quarter, 25 cents for this great book. And it's all beat up now, but I'm going through it now because the exegesis is filled with references to Greek myth. The New Testament, as you might know, most of it is written in Greek. The Holy Land was under Roman rule, but the Romans used Greek because they considered their own language, Latin, inferior to the Greek language, especially in commerce, in business. Greek had more specific terms, so you could be very clear what a contract was saying. Nowadays, in our legalese in English-speaking countries, we use Latin, which is actually inferior to English when you get down to it. But I think they just don't want us ordinary folk to be able to understand what the lawyers are saying. No, the Romans hated the Greeks and considered them filthy barbarians, but they admired their language and their culture. You see, this was long after Alexander the Great. Around 300, Alexander conquered the world. But Rome conquered Greece around 30 BC. And even Alexander wasn't really Greek, he was Macedonian. The Greeks were um, conquered and enslaved and lorded over by the Romans, but their language, which apparently came from Semitic roots, in other words, languages like Hebrew and Aramaic and Sumerian and so forth, their language was really awesome. But by this time, classical Greece was gone, and the Greeks were already allowing their ancient monuments to fall into ruin. I know there's a sentiment that Lord Elgin stole the Parthenon in Greece, in Athens. He took them to the British Museum, but those monuments had been lying in pieces, in ruins, for hundreds of years before the English and French and Germans came along and said, hey, this is awesome, let's put it back together. Now today the Parthenon it's a temple to Athena, the virgin goddess. Parthenos means virgin in Greek. So her temple is the Parthenon, the temple of the Virgin. And Athens is named after Athena, supposedly the goddess of wisdom. Well, today that Parthenon is just white marble. But in the days of ancient Greece, when it was new, the I don't know what to call them, the pieces of marble that go across under the roof with all the carved figures of centaurs and cupids and stuff and grape leaves and, well, anyway, it was painted in bright colors, just as the many of the Egyptian monuments and Babylonian monuments from ancient times were brightly painted. In some cases, bits of paint have survived. That's how we know. But yeah, the British are not saints, never have been. And of course, they've been ruled over by German royal family for quite some time. I think we can go back to William and Mary, who temporarily ruled England because the members of parliament didn't like the Stuart monarchy, like Charles and James, as they were Catholic. And since Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church, England was a Protestant nation. But it was a Catholic, oddly enough, James, forget whether he was the first or the second, there were only two. I think James the first. He had the Bible translated into English. James Stuart was a Scottish monarch, so when he was put on the throne after Elizabeth I died, England and Scotland were finally united after centuries of warfare. And palace intrigue and murder. Well, anyway, Oh, really, Oswald? That's funny. It's Catholic. Catholic means universal, so they think they're the universal church. Never mind that the Eastern Orthodox broke away centuries ago over one line in the Apostles' Creed. Catholics have uh, the Holy Spirit coming from the Father and the Son. And the um, Eastern Orthodox have the Spirit coming only from the Father. I think we could fix that line and make everybody happy, but I'm not sure. The line is the Spirit emanates from the Father and the Son. What if you said the Spirit and the Son emanate from the Father? Well, Jesus did tell, after the resurrection, he did tell his disciples that the Holy Spirit couldn't come until he left. Kind of tells you that they're the same person. Although God the Father apparently is capable of being not only in two places at one time, but actually present in the same place at the same time in two aspects. Oh, you got a Boston accent now, Tim. Okay, Boston. No, I think that's a New York accent, like, uh, can't think of a. Let's see, there's Manhattan, Staten Island, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Long Island, and that's only 5. Are there 5? I think there's 5 boroughs. Uh, can't think. Anyway, whatever. I think the Kennedys had a Boston accent. I can't believe that people thought John Kennedy was handsome. I always thought he was ugly, ugly mug. New Jersey is the 6th New York accent. Yeah, New Jersey, that's what I'm thinking. Boston in a New Jersey accent. Oh, well. Yeah, I know Kennedy pronounced Cuba wrong. Cuba. But I listen to the radio and YouTube. I don't have actual TV, but sometimes the radio plays clips from the television news. And I'm really tired of things like Semitic is not pronounced Semitic unless you're paid to talk on the air. Austin Brahmins, I have no clue. I don't even know what that is. Is it a sports team? Anyway, coming up was the first thing I noticed in the early 90s. All of a sudden, coming up after the break became coming up. And then they started playing with R's, turning R into roo or woo. And then almost every vowel began to sound like But the one that's ticking me off right now is these religious podcasts on YouTube mostly, but other places too, where they can't say Semitic, they call it Semitic. Drives me up the wall. Oh, rich Anglo families of Boston were known as the Boston Brahmins. Oh, they wanted India's caste system in America. I see, yeah. Yeah, I'm aware of the caste system, but it isn't terribly different from the medieval system. The system of medieval Europe, the lords owned all the land and everybody else was a tenant who had to pay rent and taxes and such. Um, One of the last holdouts was Russia. Even when Tsar Nicholas freed the serfs, they weren't really financially free. And we're pretty much slaves here. King James fan, the king or the Bible? Well, more and more people are saying Yeshua instead of Jesus. Well, I think that no matter how we pronounce the name, God knows what we mean. The Bible. Yeah, I love the poetry of the King James, but when I'm reading it aloud, all the doeths and shineths and goeths get really hard to pronounce. So I've kind of drifted toward the English Standard Version, which is very recent, at least in this millennium when it was translated. And there are some errors in the King James, but they're not terribly super terrible errors. The scholars didn't do it on purpose either. They did the best they could with what they had. But we have many more manuscripts available now because of the modern archaeology beginning in pretty much the 1800s. And of course, there's the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was what, 1948, thereabouts. The Dead Sea Scrolls included the book of Isaiah. I think one manuscript was complete and the other wasn't, but they had two scrolls of Isaiah and they compared them to the Masoretic text, which was what, 7 or 800 AD, and they were pretty close to identical. Those Jewish scribes were very careful and did a very good job. And they try to tell us that we've, played a game of telephone. Well, where you whisper something in someone's ear and then that person whispers to someone else. Well, that doesn't happen when things are written down. You might get typos. And there are hundreds of errors or differences in manuscripts, but most of them are things like a variant spelling of the same word or the word the, either being there or not being there. They don't make a difference. Well, anyway, we're way off the JFK topic and the UFOs and the exegesis. My major problem, even in reading the exegesis, the official book of it, Phil made stuff up. And I'm looking at this letter, which is early on in the first chapter. It's dated 1974, but it refers to things that happened in 1975. And I don't think that Phil was quite that prescient. He could see a little into the future here and there in bits and pieces, but I think the letter is misdated. Oh, Michael's here with his name in Greek letters, by the way. Oh, Oswald, see you later. Maybe you can catch the replay. I've been on for an hour and 20, and I haven't lost the signal. Yay! YouTube's being nice today. Or the stinking Verizon internet is. So, anyway, I have several translations of the Bible. I have the interlinear Greek and English New Testament that Phil used for research. It was really my book anyway, but he used it. It has the King James in the margin and then the Nestle text. It's either Nestle or Nestle. I think it's Nestle. It's spelled just like the chocolate company. Going across the page, and underneath it, literal translations into English of each individual word. And Phil and I both went over the first chapter of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And now I have to paraphrase. Everything that was made through him, and not a thing was made without him. And the Word became flesh and walked among us. In other words, Jesus was the Word of God, and the Word participated in the creation in Genesis 1 when God spoke. That seems to be a real key to Phil's concept of theology. It's beginning to take over mine. The exegesis book that I'm working on is really time consuming and really, really slow, detailed work. But I think it will be worth it. It'll have footnotes. There's a little preview version on Amazon Kindle. It's a tiny thing, but it's only 99 cents. The X in Exegesis Preview Edition. It has some of my thoughts on the hit or invasion of his home, which happened before I met him, by the way. It also has my thoughts on the letter X. Phil thought that the cross on which Jesus was hanged was shaped like an X. Almost certainly wrong, and the experts explained why. Primarily that there was this sign over his head that said, this is Jesus, King of the Jews, in 3 languages. You couldn't put that on a cross shaped like the X. However, he was half right when he said that the cross that Constantine saw in the sky was shaped like an X. It was really a chi rho. It was 2 Greek letters. They look like XP, but the P went down through the center of the cross with the loop above the X. Chi rho, like that. First 2 letters of Christ, CH, which is 1 letter in Greek, and RH, which is also 1 letter in Greek. An early Christian symbol, and it is the symbol that Constantine had his soldiers put on their shields right before the most important battle of the war, in which Constantine uh, conquered, vanquished, defeated his Roman rival, and united the eastern and western kingdoms under 1 emperor. It didn't last, but oh well. The empire fell apart primarily when the Muslims took Constantinople, the capital of Constantine's empire, long after Constantine's death. Well, hi, Gwen. I'm winding down and you just got here. Bummer. I'll, in a few minutes after I sign off, the replay will be available. Let's see. I can't type and talk at the same time. I try. Um, where was I? Oh, yeah. Constantinople, the fall of. By the way, I said that Russia really won both world wars because the Germans were so badly defeated when they invaded Russia in World War One and the Soviet Union in World War Two. They lost most of their military might. And yes, the war in Europe with England and America invading France on D-Day, landing on Normandy, that was important. But they were not facing the full force of the German Wehrmacht, the defensive might or army, because so many had been wiped out in Russia, either killed outright or captured and imprisoned. And even those who came home were wretched. Anyway, Russia also defeated Napoleon. Yes, Wellington had a great victory at Waterloo, but it was Russia who defeated him. He didn't have a chance of taking Moscow because when it was obvious that Napoleon's army would take Moscow, the people packed up everything and left, and they burned the city of Moscow to the ground and said, "Here, take it, you can have it." Don't poke the Russian bear, yeah. And don't fight a war on two fronts. Well, Germany didn't have a whole lot of choice in the matter because Germany is surrounded. They've got France, the Netherlands, Denmark on one side, and they've got Poland and various Baltic countries and Russia on the other side. To the south, yeah, Austria was okay with the Anschluss, the unification. Uh, Czechoslovakia wasn't. Um, Italy was an ally, so they did. Germany didn't invade there. Um, Switzerland remained neutral, but you see, even today, people want to take Russia's only warm water port, Sebastopol, in the Crimean Peninsula, which apparently the pundits say that Crimea belongs to Ukraine and Russia's a bunch of invaders. But back before our civil war, the Ukraine, including Crimea, was a vassal of the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire. And Russia liberated them in a bloody war that was very costly. I don't know why the Kaiser did it unless it was for that warm water port at Sebastopol, which goes into the Baltic Sea, and then from there you go through the Dardanelles between Turkey and Greece or Macedonia, and past Iran and into the Mediterranean. That's a place of conflict today. Iran keeps threatening to close the straits. Of course, I'm sure they would let their friends, the Russians, through, but they don't like the United States or most of Europe, for that matter. That area, the Crimea and the Dardanelles, the straits between Iran and the Middle East, not Greece. I'm blanking. I gotta get a map. Dardanelles. Oops, I didn't write map in it. Oh, the Bosporus. Okay. I'm sorry, I got the wrong sea. It's the Black Sea. Black Sea, not Baltic. The Baltic is up north where the Baltic states are, like Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Black Sea, the Bosporus. Bosphorus. Bosphorus equals Dardanelles, I think, equals straight. Come on, open the map so I can see it better. All right. Yeah. You can go between Turkey and Greece or between Iran and something. Okay. Iran map. Gosh. Come on, open. I'm confusing two different thingies. Travel souvenir. Oh, Iran is the Persian Gulf? Okay, so it isn't Iran. That's weird. It's the Caspian Sea that leads to Iran. And the map doesn't go far enough, but the Black Sea, yeah, takes you between Turkey and Greece. And that's how the Soviets could get to the Mediterranean, but this ain't happening. Caspian Sea. I guess that's just how they get to Iran. Right, they would get to Iran from the Caspian Sea, where there's been some brouhaha about oil pipelines. They'd get there from Kazakhstan, home of the Cossacks. But yeah, the Ukraine is basically part of Eastern Europe, as is Russia. And you would go from Sebastopol across the Black Sea and then through the straits between Turkey and Greece, Romania, Macedonia. Okay. They got too many seas there. The Caspian Sea is totally inland. The Black Sea opens out into the Mediterranean. Anyway, even in the time of Napoleon, the Europeans wanted to take that warm water port from Russia. Their other ports are in the North Pacific or in the Arctic, and they freeze every winter. Of course, there's that area between the two Koreas and Japan, which doesn't freeze. But you got these other countries there, like the Koreas and Japan. Aha, Stalin was secretly planning to invade Germany in World War II, and Hitler just invaded Russia first and prevented that from happening. It's entirely possible. Neither Stalin nor Hitler could be trusted. And by the way, Stalin killed many more millions than Hitler did, but the Soviet Union was our ally, so we didn't make a fuss about it until um, after the war was over, long after. Russia needs the Crimean Peninsula. They need that warm water port at Sevastopol. Um, and so, yes, Ukrainians have their own language and culture. Yes, they need to be independent and self ruling, but they owe Russia a great debt for freeing them from domination as a satrapy of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. And they should work it out peacefully. I don't like the way Russia is literally invading by having Russians immigrate to the Ukraine. Sound familiar? That's how uh, people from the Middle East are invading Europe. They're immigrating in vast numbers. It's easier to take over if you become the population. And Europe has a big problem with a very low birth rate. They actually need more people for their workforce, if nothing else, for their tax base, I'm sure. You see, governments don't produce anything of value. Their job is supposed to be to protect us from foreign invasion and um, to deal with disputes among the states or provinces or whatever the country's made of. Don't poke the Russian baron. Don't tug the dragon's tail. Okay. Anyway, gee, governments are leeches. And boy, being in California, don't I know it? They tax everything. They're actually talking about a window tax, something to do with global warming. Many moons ago, I saw a movie on television called Oliver Twist. The old black and white movie. Not Oliver Twist, what am I thinking? The Prince and the Pauper. The prince wanted to see what real life was like, so he traded places with a peasant boy who looked like him. And the peasant boy all of a sudden is the king because the prince's father died. And his officials want him to sign a document so that windows will be taxed. And he says, "That's ridiculous. You can't tax the sunlight." Well, California wants to tax windows because they let heat and cold in and out of your house, and that's bad for global warming. we pay a deposit on plastic bottles. They don't get recycled, and many of the recycling centers are shutting down. Bill Gates wants in. Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm fading. My brain's fried, and I screwed up the thing about the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea and the Baltic Sea and Iran and Turkey and so forth. Anyway, I would show you my cat again, but I don't know where she went. Tora is a cutie. I'm I'm sure that she has some bobcat DNA. Oh, I still have to get her spayed. Oh, and by the way, don't forget the Walter Bosley channel. Walter Bosley researches things like the esoteric Napoleon. His nonfiction book. Now, see, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. The esoteric Napoleon discusses Napoleon's visit to Egypt and his interest in the paranormal and much more. There are a lot of mysteries about Napoleon. Uh, I'm never sure when he's going to come on, but I think it's in about 10 minutes. He might come on at 5 p.m. Pacific. He might come on at 5:30. But since it's 10 till 5, I should start easing on out of here so I can go to his channel and wait for his live podcast. It's always very interesting. He's also written some pulp fiction. There's, I haven't read it, but the summaries of those stories sound very interesting. No, Napoleon did not shoot the nose off the Sphinx. The Arab did that. And you know why? Because Muslims are not supposed to make images of real things. You'll notice that their temples are decorated with geometric designs, not with statues of saints. So he was offended by the Sphinx because it was um, blasphemy. He tried to blow it to bits, but he failed. He did knock the nose off the Sphinx. I don't remember exactly when the Arabs invaded Egypt, but today there's a large portion of the Egyptian population is ethnic Arab. Of course, they also intermarried with the local people, but in any case, the people of Egypt today are not the people of ancient Egypt. They're quite different, just as the Germans today are actually more closely related to the Vikings than to the Germani who migrated from Eastern Europe. And the French today are more Germanic than they are Frankish. France was named after the Franks. And England, God only knows they've got such a mix of different ethnicities. But the Scots and the Irish managed to kind of keep their identity. The Welsh and Cornish to some extent, but they're losing their native languages. Almost nobody speaks Welsh or Cornish anymore, but you will find people speaking Scottish and Irish. At least they gave up speaking French after William the Conqueror died. His French was nothing like French today, really. Um, they called him William the Bastard because his father wasn't married to his mother. But William was like a duke in Western France, and he was the Duke of Normandy, but uh, the French province of Brittany historically went kind of back and forth. The British wanted France because Brittany was obviously British, but the French wanted England because Britain was obviously an island off the coast of Brittany. So they fought over it for a long time. William managed to conquer England and make everybody at court speak French, made it the official language of his kingdom, introduced the nasal sound of the letter A, ah, which the French have given up. Now they pronounce it ah, and so do the British for the most part. And you know, they kind of destroyed the English language because so many people mixed French and English, because French is not easy to learn, especially when you're, let's say, a 30 or 40-year-old merchant in London and all of a sudden you got to speak this foreign language or you can't do business. They did their best. Oh, great. I'm hearing sirens, but they're definitely law enforcement, not fire, and not an ambulance, but they're close by. Well, anyway, I really got to run so I can tune into the Walter Bosley channel on YouTube. He has a great chat on his podcasts too. So let me scoot on out of here and thank you all for listening. Oh, let's see, about 15 extra letters on every word in French. Yeah, well, so do the English, especially the Welsh. I've been shown the names of towns by English people, and they say, do you have any idea how to pronounce this? And I'm going, well, gee, it's got 5 syllables. And they say, no, that's pie. I go, okay. Anyway, I think the Welsh must have learned it from the French or the other way around. Yeah, Nespa is, or Escuse, or I can't remember how to spell Nespa, but it's huge and it looks like something longer and completely different. I tried to learn French. I got a tutor and barely pulled a B in beginning French in the junior college. Ugh. That's okay. German and Spanish were easy. By the way, in Germany, they don't say it's Greek to me when they don't understand. In English, we say it's Greek to me. The Germans say it's Spanish to me. Food for thought. Okay, I gotta scoot on out of here and catch you next week, if not sooner. Sometimes I get inspired and come on just for, not just because I want to. I really got a Walter Bosley channel. So catch you later.